All right, greetings everybody. All right, greetings everybody, and welcome to week number 6. That is right, week number 6 of your 9407 class, which is your intellectual freedom and its discontents class. As always, I'm your professor, Dr. JSK Alston, and what we are going to do today is a quick state of the course update, and then I'm going to say a few words about Banned Books Week. We will start on Banned Books modules actually next week. I apologize that the course just kind of falls where it falls. I was not going to move around the two Banned Books modules. I was not going to move them around to match Banned Books Week, because then I'll just have to move it back next time around and that sort of thing. And yeah, just no reason. So yeah, you can still do your library neutrality module this week, and you will do 2 weeks of Banned Books starting next week, and then also do that the following week. But I am going to talk about Banned Books in this check-in video, and we've talked about library neutrality. That is what your first sync session was about, so hopefully you have not forgotten that. By the way, one thing that you do need to know, the first thing that you need to know is that there will not be a check-in video next week, because you will have a sync session next Tuesday. Again, you will have a sync session next Tuesday. Next Tuesday, we will be hearing from Leanne Lord. Hold on for a moment. Okay, so this is Leanne Lord. She is a comedian. She has been speaking with my intellectual freedom classes for the past few years. She has appeared on Dry Bar Comedy, Comedy Central. She has appeared on either The View or The Talk, whichever one of those two. Oh, The View. There it is right there. She's been on HBO, Def Comedy Jam. She has been on Comic View from BET, Showtime, HBO, all of the things. And I am actually going to upload one of her free comedy specials that's on Tubi. I'm going to upload that into the course probably tonight. So probably the same time that I do this check-in video upload, okay? So yeah, Leanne is going to answer a few questions from me, and then I'm going to open it up to question and answer from the audience. But as I touched on last week, I do think that intellectual freedom, it has some particular nuances when it comes to comedy, right? And I talked about how I think that comedy will suffer greatly if we get to the point where hate speech is considered unprotected by the First Amendment, and then you can once hate speech is unprotected by the First Amendment, I think that will open the floodgates for people to say, oh, this is a comedy, it's hate speech, and then comedy is going to take a nosedive from there. So I think that if there is one good thing about hate speech being protected by the First Amendment, it is protecting, I believe in many cases, it is protecting stand-up comics and comedy writers and that sort of thing, okay? But she's going to tell her side of that story and give her perspective, and given that she is a professional stand-up comedian, she's toured with Chris Rock, she has co-hosted Star Talk Radio with Neil deGrasse Tyson. She has a pretty impressive resume, and she spoke to the National Conference of African American Librarians this summer. So yeah, impressive resume, and she's a delight, and I hope that you all will come next week with plenty of questions to ask her. Hopefully I'll only be asking her questions for about 30 minutes out of the hour and a half that we have together, because I would love for there to just be 60 minutes of you all talking to this comedian as you please, okay? But yes, so no check-in video next week, because we will have a sync session next Tuesday from 7 to 8:30 p.m. Central Time. Not knowing when the time of the sync session starts in your time zone is not an excuse to no show. Okay? So that's really the main thing that you need to know right now. Outside of that, you really just have discussion board prompts for now. Trying to see. Yeah, you do have a Banned Book report that's going to be due on October the 20th. So later in October, you still got really a month before that's due, and you do have 2 modules on Banned Books before that's due, so there you have it there, okay? But yeah, so with that said, I will talk just a little bit about Banned Books Week, and I will say specifically that I think that there has actually been one positive about these MAGA times and how they have affected book censorships and book challenges and book bans. So hold on. All right, so here's what I'm going to say about book challenges and book bans and how they were when I first started in the field back in 2006 to 2008. That's when I was in library school, and how they are now and what we're looking at with banned books. So First of all, I think that this is worth talking about. So, if you don't know who Annoyed Librarian is, that's okay. Annoyed Librarian is no longer relevant because Annoyed Librarian, and we still don't know who Annoyed Librarian is or was, but they no longer write for Library Journal. So, this person, Annoyed Librarian, was somebody who for years just wrote on this blog spot sort of thing, and they wrote about how annoyed they were with librarianship and that sort of thing. Made some good points. Librarians can be extremely annoying. So, this person developed a fan following very quickly by talking trash about other librarians because I will say, if there's something that gets the blood boiling of a librarian, it is another librarian. We love each other and we hate each other. Having said that, yes. So, Annoyed Librarian was writing columns on this blog for a while, and then Library Journal actually commissioned Annoyed Librarian to be a blogger for them, but that ended a few years ago. And from there, I have not heard from Annoyed Librarian in any capacity after Library Journal stopped commissioning them to write for them. But Annoyed Librarian makes a very good point here, so I'm just going to read this really quick. Banned Books Week is upon us once again. Since the American Library Association has nothing new to say on the matter, I don't either. So read the old stuff. It's still better than the nonsense emanating from the American Library Association. Take a look at the books shown in the first link. Yeah, it's hard for people to get a hold of a Harry Potter book, and I'm sure Catcher in the Rye isn't available either. So first of all, let's pause on that because this is something that, keep in mind that this is 2008 here. So this is over 15 years ago, coming up on 20 years ago. One thing that Annoyed Librarian is doing here, and it was easy to assume this in 2008, but we know better now. And I remember 2008, and a lot of people were assuming this, but we know better now. So in 2008, we were all pretty much of the mindset that book challenges and book bans as a massive political stunt is done, because in 2008 we were having the discussion of, are libraries even still relevant? I was just finishing library school in May of 2008, and I remember people telling me at that time, why did you get a library degree? Libraries are irrelevant. Libraries are not going to be around. You're not going to be able to make a career out of this. Blah, 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 blah. From people who did not read the Occupational Outlook Handbook at all. They had all of these damn opinions, did not read a single damn thing to inform those opinions, and looked like a bunch of fools, because at the same time that they're telling me that libraries are irrelevant and I won't be able to make a career out of this, in 2008, library jobs were going up, not down, but these idiots were just saying, oh, well, we have the internet, libraries are going to be irrelevant, blah, 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 blah. They told me that in 15 years I would not have a job. I am a professor in library science right now, 15 years later, because people have opinions on stuff and they don't know what the hell they're talking about. Having said that, one thing that we were dealing with back in 2008 was people were under the mindset that libraries were irrelevant and that you could get anything you wanted through torrents or on the dark web or something like that. So who cares? And this is kind of what Annoyed Librarian is doing here. Annoyed Librarian is saying they're making fun of the idea of not being able to get a Harry Potter book, and they're making fun of the idea of Catcher in the Rye not being available. And that's where people's minds were. They thought that just because there were book challenges, that did not mean that you would not be able to get a hold of books. Fast forward now, 2024, where we actually have better technology than we did in 2008. And what has happened? These book challenges have actually worked. There are books that people cannot get a hold of that they want because the book challenges worked. And some of you may know this, some of you may not. But actually, let me pull up the articles so that y'all know I'm not just breathing hot air here. Okay, yeah, this is what I was looking for right here. Not only have the bans been a factor, but they've actually been so effective that some libraries, including the New York Public Library, are making banned books available for free by giving out library cards to people who do not live in the New York area. But kids are actually taking advantage of this. You actually have teenagers and kids who are taking advantage of this. The books have been removed in the libraries, the local public libraries and school libraries that serve them. So they are accessing ebooks through the New York Public Library, which is, what is the name of this initiative? They've got an actual initiative, and that initiative is Protect the Freedom to Read at New York Public Libraries. So they are they are giving out library cards to people, even if they don't live in New York, giving them library cards so they can access ebooks to things that are banned or challenged where they live. So yeah, Annoyed Librarian was making that joke in 2008 of, oh yeah, they're going to have a hard time getting a hold of Harry Potter and Catcher in the Rye, but they are working. These book challenges and bans are working, and they are making it hard for people to find stuff. And no, people are not just going to the torrents to get the ebooks. Instead, they're not getting pirated copies. Pirating was huge in 2000, 2001, 2008. I remember I was in college from 2001 to 2005, and yeah, we stayed on Morpheus and all those things, Napster, whatever. But those things are not being used as heavily these days as they were back then. It was kind of in vogue back then. So yeah, this is yes, they are able to prohibit access or obstruct access to these challenged books, and so yeah, Annoyed Librarian here is kind of wrong. They're just wrong. This was something that needed to be taken seriously at the time, and it was not. But having said this, what's another thing that Annoyed Librarian can kind of talk about is that what was going on prior to MAGA and prior to all of this nonsense with people trying to challenge books because they talked about critical race theory or because they talked about race and because they made white kids uncomfortable, and we have to also challenge books that talk about sexuality and gender identity and that sort of thing. As if, and I went to public school, and I know that I don't, regardless of how bad genderqueer is, you are hearing worse things in a middle school locker room than you're seeing in genderqueer, okay? But yeah, so the issue, again, prior to MAGA arriving and arising and becoming this powerful entity that it is, before MAGA became what it is today, a lot of times when ALA was celebrating Banned Book Week, what they were doing was they were focusing on old books by old white people, okay? They were talking about Huck Finn. They were talking about Catcher in the Rye, like you just saw. They were talking about To Kill a Mockingbird. Old books by old white people, in most cases old white men. And of course, Harper Lee, who wrote To Kill a Mockingbird, is not a white man, but you get the idea, okay? And what happened was, because MAGA didn't focus on things like To Kill a Mockingbird and Catcher in the Rye and that sort of thing, because they focused on these newer books that were talking about race issues and talking about sexuality issues, that did cause ALA to pivot, and I will say it is about time. Now when ALA is talking about banned books, they're not just talking about Catcher in the Rye and Harry Potter and stuff that's old and stuff that's from old people and stuff that has been challenged and banned for decades. Now they are talking about things like genderqueer and some of these other more recent books that are written by people of color and talk about issues experienced by people of color and written by people who have different gender identities or who have sexuality other than heterosexuality. And those people have stories to tell, and those people are getting a chance to tell their stories, and those people should also have the opportunity to have their stories available on library shelves. But there is a sentiment within MAGA that says that they can't, and that is a sentiment that I hope we are seeing the tail end of. I hope we're seeing the tail end of MAGA, honestly. And that is not a political endorsement, by the way. I'm not allowed to endorse any candidates due to my job, and I am not endorsing anyone. I'm just saying that yeah, I do hope that this whole MAGA phenomenon is on its way out. And so yes, because of this MAGA phenomenon, again, we are even with the banned books that I selected for you all to do your banned book reports. And by the way, if you do want to switch books or anything like that, trade books with a classmate, or trade books, do a book that's not covered, but that you know has a history of being challenged or banned, contact me and let me know if you want to do another book, okay? So let me know about that. And from there, what I want to say, and this will be the last thing I say, I do want to keep this under 20 minutes. And by the way, you can speed this up. I hope you have sped it up. But I do want to keep this under 20 minutes. But one thing that I want to say in closing is that I do hope that you all don't get this dumbass library activist sentiment that causes you to do stupid stuff. And I'm going to give an example. So there was, I believe it was in Tennessee a few years ago, there was a library worker. And this wasn't a person who had a degree, to my knowledge. This was a library paraprofessional. But there was a library paraprofessional who just put their activist hat on. And no, take that shit off. Please do not wear that activist hat because it makes you look like an idiot. But they put their activist hat on and they went in their library and they took the books that were written by right-wingers, people like Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity and those people. They took those books and they took them out of the library and burned them. Okay? And they were talking about, well, these books promote hate, Sean Hannity, hate, Bill O'Reilly, hate, blah, 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 blah. And so I'm fighting hate by burning these books. Nah, cut that out. Cut that out. First of all, something isn't necessarily hate just because you don't agree with it. And there are a lot of things that I don't like coming out of the right wing. I'm a center leftist. There are a lot of things that I don't like that come out of Fox News. There are a lot of things that I don't like that Sean Hannity says and that Tucker Carlson says. It really does not matter. If I'm supporting intellectual freedom, I am not destroying the things that were written for conservatives by conservatives. Okay. Yeah, that's not kosher. That's not cool at all either. And that is what people do when they have their little activist hat on. They think, oh, well, I'm not just a librarian. I'm an activist now. So what I have to do is make society better. And the way to make society better is to protect society from these voices that they shouldn't hear, these hateful voices such as Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity and Tucker Carlson. Nah, cut it out. Leave that at the door. People have the right to read that in just the same way that you have the right to read whoever, whatever leftist liberal peacenik that believes in peace all around the world and that sort of thing. Yeah, the right wingers have the right to read what they want to read too, and it is not your place to say that them reading that stuff is harmful and therefore they should not read it if they are adults. Hey, it is what it is. Now, another thing that I want you all to be aware of, and this is probably going to be the last point that I make and then I'll close. But another thing that I need you all to be aware of is that, yes, right now, it is conservatives that are doing most of the book banning. But that hasn't always been the case, and it won't always be the case in the future, okay? So yes, right now it is people who identify with MAGA, and it is conservatives who are out here saying, we got to ban these books because they talk about gender identity, and they talk about sexuality, and they talk about race, and they make white kids uncomfortable. But there have been books that were challenged by leftists. To Kill a Mockingbird is one of them. Huck Finn is another. Huck Finn and To Kill a Mockingbird are books that have been historically challenged, and they were historically challenged by leftists because of use of racial slurs, and then also in the case of To Kill a Mockingbird, white saviorism, okay? So these books were challenged for those reasons, and they were challenged by liberals. So I don't want any leftists or liberals in here to get on their high horse and say, oh, well, it's the conservatives who want to take away your ability to read what you want to read. Don't get in that habit. Liberals have been just as guilty of it, and liberals are going to do that shit again in the future because that's just the way it goes. Ain't nothing new under the sun. Right now, it's the conservatives attacking the libraries, but eventually it'll go back to being the liberals who say, oh, well, that's got harmful themes of war in it. That talks about racism. That talks about white saviorism. That has racial slurs, blah, 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 blah. They'll find ways to challenge and ban books too. So I don't want you all to look at book challenges and book bans as a right-wing problem. I just want you all to look at it as a polarized political environment problem. All right? So that is going to be it for me. There's not really much to say, and I am keeping it under 20 minutes. I am Dr. Jace, and I think that banning books, no matter if it's for liberal or conservative content, is a disgrace. I will not see you next week in the check-in video, but we will see you when Leigh Ann comes to talk to us. Until then, I'll see you in the discussion boards. Ta-ta.